Hey everybody, welcome to your lesson on ethical guidelines in psychology. This is the last lesson in Unit 1, and we're going to go over all of the different ethical guidelines used in different psychological research. So, ethics refers to correct rules of conduct necessary when carrying out research. We have a moral responsibility to protect research participants from harm. However important the issue under investigation, psychologists need to remember that they have a duty to respect the rights and dignity of research participants. So this slide basically just goes over all of the reasons why we have ethical guidelines in psychology and what ethics is in terms of psychology. What does it mean to be ethical? So according to the ethical guidelines set by the American Psychological Association, which I will abbreviate from here on out as APA, and when we talk about it in class, we'll refer to it as APA, all psychological research in which animals are used as subjects should conform to all APA ethical guidelines for animal research. And we're going to do several activities in class where you're going to be using the APA guidelines to determine whether studies or research are ethical or not. So why do psychologists study animals? Well, animals are fascinating to study. They teach us about humans, and they often have simpler systems that we can then apply. What ethical guidelines safeguard animal research subjects? Well, housing animals under reasonably natural living conditions with companions for social animals. That would be something that safeguards animal research subjects against unethical behaviors. Researchers must provide humane care and healthful conditions, and that testing should minimize discomfort. And most universities screen research proposals often through an animal care ethics committee, and laboratories are regulated and inspected. So those are three main ways that animal research subjects are safeguarded against the unethical treatment. How have animals benefited from animal research? Well, psychologists have helped zoos enrich animal environments by reducing the learned helplessness that can occur when animals are living in captivity and providing animals with more choice. So in their captive environment, giving them more choice can help really enrich their environments and enrich their lives. All right, so moving from animals to humans, what ethical guidelines safeguard human research participants? There's informed consent, protection from harm, debriefing, right to withdraw, and confidentiality. So let's discuss informed consent first. We've got consent and informed consent. Consent is simply, are you willing to participate in this experiment? Whereas informed consent is actually explaining what the experiment is and what it involves. So this experiment involves exposure to graphic images that may be disturbing and random bursts of light that have been known to induce seizures. Are you willing to participate in this experiment? So it's really giving a detailed description so that there are no surprises with it, really. And the only time, I just want to add this in here, this is in your notes, it's not on the slide, so make sure you get this written down. The only time when it's okay for a psychologist to share results about one person's experiment or one person's study or research is when you get written permission from that patient or from that participant. Otherwise, written responses or otherwise results may not be shared unless there is a written response. Permission. Okay, debriefing. So we're going to talk about the difference between deception and debriefing and why debriefing is necessary. So in some experiments, the true purpose cannot be revealed because it would influence the results. That's deception. So when temporary deception is necessary to the research, It must be fully explained at the conclusion of the experiment. So that's what debriefing is. You know, we debrief group initiatives, we talk about it at the end. Same thing. You talk about it at the end, and that's when the real purpose is able to be revealed. So before I go on to this slide, some of the other ones that we didn't talk about, like the right to withdraw, we'll be talking about that when we go into some of the work that we're going to activities that we're going to participate in class. So how do you think values affect psychological science? This isn't actually something you need to write, but something to consider, and jot down some notes about how you think, because we're going to talk about this in the lesson check-in. So a couple of things. Should we study worker productivity or worker morale? So like, how happy are workers and how productive are they? Should we study sex discrimination or gender differences? Should we study conformity or independence? So how people conform, or are people independent, and what makes them those ways? So your values are going to affect psychological science, but how in general do you think values, societal values, affect psychological science? Another thing to consider is, how do the purpose and labels affect psychological science? So what's the purpose of the research? Is it to inform, persuade, enlighten? And how is the behavior labeled? Did the participant react stubbornly or with resolve? Did the subject show fear or caution? So these are all things to consider when we're talking about psychological science and the research that's involved with it. So I told you your lessons were going to get shorter. This one was under 7 minutes. Yay! I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you next class.